All right, welcome. ZASLOW Show 2.0. It is a Thursday, the 22nd of December. Good to have you aboard, however you're listening to us today. We love you long time. Appreciate you guys telling all your friends, telling all your family. Tell everybody you know about ZASLOW Show 2.0. However you're listening to us. Hey, maybe you're watching us on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@ZASLOW Show. That's what I'm talking about. We got a lot going on here today. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to talk to my pal Evan Cohen, SiriusXM, Mad Dog Radio, Morning Men, every morning, 6 to 9 a.m. Those guys are my favorites. Evan's a good friend of mine and a huge Heat fan. So we will talk Heat basketball coming up with him. The Heat are not in action tonight. They are back in action tomorrow as this 4-game homestand continues with the Indiana Pacers. Florida Panthers last night, they continue to be a huge, massive disappointment. So we'll get back to that. We'll get to that coming up in a few minutes here. I do want to start out with something that's kind of off topic here, all right? Now, we're only a few sleeps away from Miami Dolphins football. Dolphins looking to get back in the win column, of course, against the Green Bay Packers this weekend. I think the Dolphins are going to kick the Packers' ass. We'll do a little bit on that as well. But here's what I got for you to start the show today. I know that I am late to the party on this one, all right? But I got to start out with this documentary that I watched yesterday, okay? So my son is home for vacation, and he's going to finish Netflix. He's scrolling through Netflix, and he comes across the Untold documentaries, and he comes across the Manti Te'o documentary. Again, I'm late to the party on this one because this came out, like 2 months ago, maybe something like that? And there was a big buzz about it and everything because, he hasn't done any kind of, sit down or, talked about this in, 10 years or whatever it was. And Manti Te'o, he ended up having a decent NFL career. Played 7 or 8 years. An average linebacker. But anyway, one of the all-time great linebackers in college football, right? And everybody knows the name Levine, all right? It's been a big joke in sports forever, where we found out that his girlfriend, it was not real, and, was he a part of it? Was he not part of it? Was he just super gullible? What was the deal? Okay. So, you got this documentary, this Untold series, which also the next one I want to watch is the one on Tim Donaghy. But anyway, so you got this documentary on Manti Te'o, and my son's scrolling through the, Netflix says, hey, do you know about this story? Do you know about this Manti Te'o? I'm like, yeah. Matter of fact, I hear that documentary is crazy. You want to watch it? He goes, yeah. So we sat down and we watched it yesterday. It's 2 episodes. It's 2 parts. I don't know, total's 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours. And so we watched the whole thing yesterday. Now, I had heard it's great. I had heard it's wild. It is great. It is wild. And I highly recommend it. But I'm bringing this up because, and again, I know I'm late to the party, so bear with me here. But I'm bringing it up because, man, that documentary, it made me feel so bad. I felt so bad for him. You come out of it, he definitely had nothing to do with it, all right? Super gullible, super naive, definitely nothing to do with it. But he despite those things, he comes out of the documentary, I thought, looking great. Looking really, really likable. I turned to my son at one point late in the documentary and go, seems like such a great guy. And I felt so bad for him. Did anyone else have, we all were making Lene Kakua. We were all making fun, right, at the time, 10 years ago. And, excuse me, I felt so bad toward the end of it, especially when, he started to get emotional because all these feelings are coming back. He got very emotional, but where he was talking about how he eventually went to therapy and he had to forgive himself. He'd forgiven the dude who catfished him, which, by the way, and they go over this in the documentary, how catfishing wasn't a thing back then. No one knew what catfishing was. No one had ever heard of what catfishing was. It wasn't a thing. And he went over how, in therapy, how he had forgiven this dude, but the therapist asked if he'd forgiven himself. And then he got very emotional on camera, you know, and realized that he's going to rise above all of it. And he's good. Like, there was one line that I thought was super poignant where he's like, you know what? And he apparently his personality's always been like this, just helping people. He's a good guy, just likes to help people. And if he can make someone happy by taking a picture of them and then they walk away and they're, you know, snickering with their friends, oh, it's Manti Te'o, then, you know, that's what I'm going to do for people. I'm going to make people happy that way. And I was like, man, what an unbelievable attitude that, now he's married, he's got a kid. What an unbelievable attitude he's able to have over this, because his life essentially, I don't know if his life was ruined, but it cost him millions of dollars. He was never the same player, starting with the national championship game. He was never the same player. It cost him his dignity. And I felt super bad when they're interviewing the parents. And this is toward the end also, where the mom and the dad, they're crying, they're holding back tears while they're talking about it at this point in the documentary. And just as a parent, I'm like, I can't even imagine, you know, your child is going through this and there's nothing you could do about it. And he's a laughingstock. A laughingstock, going from being super popular, Heisman candidate, and now a laughingstock, and there's nothing you could do about it. And again, like, it took his dignity. And it made me feel so bad, not just because he didn't deserve this, and he definitely was not at fault. I mean, I guess if you count being naive at fault, he definitely wasn't at fault. But also then from a parental perspective, where it's like, man, I felt so bad for that family. And I especially felt bad for him because he definitely is a really good dude. And when the documentary was over, it was like, I just wanted to, like, I'm sure I made fun. I'm sure we all made fun on the radio. Definitely. And I wanted to apologize to him. I felt really bad. The documentary, it really made me feel bad for him. I thought he came out looking great. So if you haven't seen it yet, or if you were delaying seeing it like myself, I hadn't seen it. I knew I was going to get around to it eventually. Yesterday was a perfect opportunity. I really recommend watching The Untold, the Manti Te'o story, whatever it's called. I know it's titled Untold. It's a docuseries. But go back and watch that. It's wild. I know everybody was talking about it when it came out like 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, whatever it was. I finally got around to it. I can't recommend it enough. And again, I'm glad that he seems to be in a good place, because he seems like a great dude. All right, so again, I know I'm kind of late on that one, but I had to talk a little bit about it, especially because that's a better way to start the show than with the disaster that was the Florida Panthers last night. So the Florida Panthers last night, they were taking on the New Jersey Devils, and I told you this, they're still super shorthanded. They're still without Barkov, who's missing his second consecutive game because in the game against the Devils, he had a dirty play by one of the guys from the Devils. Barkov hurt his knee. Apparently, though, he's not going to be out for a while. He'll be back in the short term, but he missed his second consecutive game, and the Panthers now have lost both of those games. They lost, they gave up 7 goals a few nights ago to Boston. They lost last night 4-2 to the Devils. A game that the Panthers were up 2-1 going into the third period. The Panthers going into the third period this year in games that they were leading were 13-0-2. So for the first time this year, in regulation, the Panthers lose a game that they led going into the third period. They gave up 3 goals, including the empty netter, in the third period. Just a terrible job. I don't want to hear about injuries last night when the Panthers go into the third period with a lead. The injuries didn't play a role last night. They're up 2-1 going into the third period. They're facing a goaltender, who was excellent, by the way, but they're facing a goaltender who had not started a game since the beginning of last month. And the Panthers give up 3, including the empty net, goals in the third period to wind up losing last night 4-2. And I said yesterday, oh, you're catching the Devils, and the Devils are a really good team, but they had lost 6 in a row. I always think that's dangerous. Like, oh, it's good to face a good team when they're in the middle of a losing streak. No, I don't think so. I told you that yesterday. I think facing a good team in the middle of a big losing streak like that is a bad thing. They're going to snap out of it. They're going to wind up winning one of these games, and it ended up being last night and come from behind fashion going into the third period. So it's as frustrating a season I can ever remember as a sports fan. And I know ZASLOW, you're using hyperbole. I don't know, man. The expectations for this Panther team going into the year is Stanley Cup. It's not about making the playoffs anymore. Last year was about making the playoffs and then doing some damage. Expectation after winning the President's Cup, the expectation going into this year, especially when they decided to fire Andrew Brunette, which I was okay with. I want to get an experienced coach in here. But when you're firing the coach who led the team to the President's Cup, even though it was on an interim basis, that's because the expectation is to win the Stanley Cup. If the goal was just to get back to the playoffs, you keep Andrew Brunette. So clearly the goal for this team is to win the Stanley Cup, and they're not going to make the playoffs. The team stinks. I understand they're ravaged by injuries, but still, it's not as if when Barkov has been in the lineup, and Duclair's been out of the lineup all year. I know Lundell's, he just came back last night. Radko Gudas was supposed to return last night. He didn't. Hornquist is not close to returning. Look, they're in a bad spot as far as injuries go. But it's amazing when you consider the Panthers won the Tkachuk trade. I don't want to hear, they should never have traded Huberdeau. Nah, the Panthers won the Tkachuk trade. Huberdeau is not doing so hot in Calgary, and Tkachuk has been really good for the Panthers. They won that trade, and they are so much worse than they were last year. It's pretty amazing when you consider that. This is as frustrating a season as a South Florida sports fan, a Miami sports fan, that I can remember. The year after the Heat won the championship in 2007, that was a really frustrating regular season. But at least they're coming off of winning the NBA championship. It's up there, man. And I don't see them turning it around. I really don't. This is as frustrating a season. And I don't know how many, for people who are listening to ZASLOW Show 2.0 right now, I don't know how many of you can relate because, yes, you may love the Panthers, but if you're not, hardcore about the Panthers like I am, it's not going to resonate with you as far as most frustrating season. Like the Dolphins and the Heat do that to you. The Hurricanes do that to you. Maybe even the Marlins. I don't know how many people it's going to resonate with, but for me, it's as frustrating a season I can ever remember as a Miami sports fan. So they lose last night. Next up, they're at the Islanders on Friday. Hopefully they continue to get some healthy bodies back there. I brought this up yesterday in regards to the Dolphins, and we're going to talk some Heat coming up with Evan. I brought this up yesterday in regards to the Dolphins, where it's a funny thing, I think, that's going on with the Dolphins right now, where they weren't getting a ton of credit, I don't believe, when it comes to the 5-game winning streak, the teams that they were playing in the winning streak, Tua, how much is him, how much is Tyreek Hill helping him, that whole kind of deal. I feel like there were still a ton of doubters out there. And like I said, I brought this up yesterday where it's almost as if now during this 3-game losing streak, the Dolphins are getting more respect after their performance in Buffalo on Saturday night. I would have thought this is a prime opportunity for everyone to jump on the Dolphins, that they're pretenders, that they were fugazi, and they're not a contending type team. But here's what I think is happening. Stephen A. Smith yesterday was on television, and Stephen A. Smith does the whole, they showed me Saturday that they could beat anybody. And I agree with that. We're so many days removed now from the game where I could start looking at the big picture. I could start looking at more the macro view because the micro view is very upset about the 3-game losing streak. And I still am. Although I think the Dolphins are going to win these final 3 games. I think they're going to put on a great performance this Sunday afternoon against Green Bay. But I could start to look at the macro now, which is, yeah, their performance on Saturday night. They didn't make enough plays late, but they went on the road, very difficult conditions. The most adversity they faced all year because they had faced a 2-game losing streak at that point. So they're up against it. You got to prove a little something here. And they went there to Buffalo, and they were up by 8 in the fourth quarter. They had opportunities to win the game. They came up short against what's probably the best team in the AFC, maybe the best team in the NFL. So I could see the macro. I could see the bigger picture now, where Stephen A. Smith there yesterday says, they showed me Saturday they can beat anybody. I think what's been going on, and I talked about this during the winning streak, where, you know, when there's still some people, and I think Stephen A. actually was the one who made this argument where, you know, it's short passes and those receivers, they're getting the yards after the catch, you know. No, that's not what's been happening at all. You know, you got people on television who are saying how Tua's benefited from this, benefited from that. It's, yeah, you haven't been watching the games. You're just looking at the box score. You clearly have not been watching the games. And I strongly believe that. You got people out there who were giving analysis on the Dolphins who weren't watching the games. They're just assuming Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, that they're catching these 6-yard slants and they're taking it to the house. And that can't be further from the truth. So I think because the Dolphins have been on national TV recently, you know, the Charger game was national TV, and this past week against Buffalo is national TV. Essentially, this game against the Packers this weekend is national TV as well, because the NFL is playing their games on Saturday this week, and you only have 3 games on Sunday. They're all standalone games. So I think what's been happening is, because the Dolphins have been on national TV the last couple weeks, standalone games, people are paying attention to them now, but especially this game against Buffalo, I think because they were on national TV this past Saturday, and they played well. I think there are people like Stephen A. on television who are watching them for the first time. Not just looking at the box score, not just hearing about what happened and then going on and talking about it. These guys on television, man, they can't watch every game. They got comments about every game. They can't watch every game. And I don't think they've been watching the Dolphins for most of the year. And then this Saturday night at Buffalo, great game. Had a chance to win, played well enough to win, played well. I think there are plenty of national people who are watching them for the first time, or at least watching them in the game in its entirety for the first time this year. Because the Dolphins are getting a lot more credit this week during a 3-game losing streak. And they had a 3-game losing streak earlier in the season. Of course, that was all, you know, Teddy Bridgewater and Skylar Thompson. But they're getting so much more credit right now. When I thought everyone would be doubting them, they're getting so much more credit right now during this losing streak than they were getting previously during the winning streak from some people. And I think my theory's right, where I think there are people out there who are watching them for the very first time this past Saturday night against Buffalo. And guess what? They played really well. So it's interesting what the reaction has been. By the way, Thursday Night Football tonight. That's right. You got Thursday Night Football tonight. Jaguars at Jets. That's a game that the Dolphin fan is interested in, because the Jaguars, number 1, they are 1 game back of the number 4 spot. They're 1 game back in the AFC South, and the Titans got big problems of their own. So the Jaguars can creep closer to win the division. Why do the Dolphins care about that? The Dolphins care about that because if they can jump up to the number 5 spot, they would play at the AFC South winner. They would play at the number 4 seed, and that could be Jacksonville, it could be Tennessee. So this is a game you're interested in from that perspective. So you're rooting for the Jaguars tonight, I believe. But also root for the Jaguars because you're rooting against the Jets. You're rooting against the Jets tonight because you want the teams below you, the Jets and the Patriots, to drop out of the playoff picture so you don't have to worry about missing the postseason. So this game tonight, it's got some weight as far as the Dolphins go. So the Dolphin fans into this game tonight, Jaguars at Jets. Hey, if you're looking for a place to watch the game tonight, all right, Briny Irish Pub, Briny Pub Pompano. I've told you, that's my spot for Dolphin games. I will be there this Sunday afternoon for Dolphins and Packers, all right? The world's greatest upscale dive bar, Briny Pub Pompano. You take Atlantic Boulevard, you go all the way east. You don't park in the ocean, all right? You go all the way to the ocean, but don't park in the ocean. Park behind the Briny, all right? Parking's free right there. Briny will validate you. Briny Irish Pub, park right behind, like I said, free parking. You got live music every single night. The Briny Hour, every day, Monday through Friday from 4 to 7 p.m. That's happy hour. All kinds of drink specials, craft beer on tap, and like I said, live music every night. NFL Sunday Ticket, which this weekend is going to be Saturday Ticket. But Sunday, I'll be there watching the Dolphins, the world's greatest upscale dive bar, Briny Irish Pub.